Okay, let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to a deep dive into some, well, frankly, pretty fascinating source material you've shared with us. It's definitely out there.
It really does. Definitely pushes the boundaries. Our mission today is to unpack this transcript you sent over. It lays out a, let's say, unique vision of the near future, focusing heavily on 2027.
Right, the core idea is this end of the world as we know it by 2027. But crucially, the source isn't talking total destruction, more like a radical shift into a sci-fi world.
Exactly. And understanding how the source pulls together all these different threads, economics, tech, maybe even non-human intelligence, astrology, it connects them all to explain this huge shift, and the intense chaos, it says, is actually necessary.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, we're using this specific source as our factual basis for this discussion. We're exploring its framework, its claims.
Precisely. It's about understanding this viewpoint, its internal logic, not about us predicting doom or agreeing with it, just dissecting this narrative of transformation and chaos.
And that phrase, as we know it, feels really key here.
It absolutely is. So let's start with that core premise. This emergence of a sci-fi world.
Okay, so the source says the world's fundamentally changing into this new reality, and the key claim is this isn't smooth. It actually requires the old world structure to fall apart.
Which, in the source's view, is why everything feels so chaotic now. It's not random breakdown. It's presented as a required part of the transition. The chaos is sort of participating.
Not just happening alongside it. Wow. And the source says things get weirder than you can imagine, and that's the steady state for a bit.
That's the idea. And this massive shift, it's not just one thing causing it. The source points to a whole bunch of factors converging.
Okay, walk us through those key drivers according to this material.
Well, first, there's this big shift into what it calls an ontological paradigm that's self-revealing.
Ontological paradigm shift.
Okay.
That sounds like a fundamental change in how reality itself works or how we understand it.
That's the gist. Like, reality itself is showing a deeper layer, and this happens alongside the death of old systems.
Which specific systems does the source highlight as dying?
It's very specific about the monetary system, the one based on oil, fiat currencies, and the whole pyramid-shaped social order built on top of that.
Ah, the economic angle.
Yeah, and it stresses how these dying fiat currencies are hitting the whole social structure, from families right up to, global society. The economic shift is ripping apart the old order's foundations.
Got it. So systemic economic collapse is one major driver. What else?
Then there's exposure to radically transformative technology, things that just change the game entirely.
Right, like AI, maybe other things we haven't seen yet.
Potentially. And maybe the most out there factor mentioned is the possibility of alien visitation or, well, non-human intelligence interacting with us. That's listed as another converging factor.
Okay, so NHI contact is on the list too.
It is. And then there's an astrological component, the end of an age relative to the galactic center specifically. The source even claims our solar system is getting more energy from galactic center now, contributing to the shift.
So it's this mix. Reality changing, money collapsing, wild tech, maybe aliens, cosmic cycles, all hitting at once, according to this source anyway.
That's the picture it paints. And it connects some of these in ways that sound pretty unconventional.
Like the quantum computing part, that sounded unique.
Exactly. The source claims current academics, engineers, they're missing something crucial about quantum entanglement.
Which is?
That entanglement particles linked, instantly reflecting states, no time involved. It supposedly connects directly to something the source calls the event stream.
The event stream. Okay, what's that defined as in the source?
It's described as the continuous flow, the manifestation of reality from consciousness. It's what gives us our sense of duration, which we mistake for time, and it originates from a supreme consciousness.
Right, and the source predicts that understanding this connection leads to new devices.
A whole new category, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Based on analog computing plus AI firmware. It calls them detectors for the event stream.
Detectors for the event stream, like seeing what's about to happen.
Potentially handheld things, yeah, that could peer into the event stream to see what's likely to manifest before decisions are made. So tech interacting with the consciousness, creating reality, basically.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely pushing the definition of computing, seeing potential futures.
The source admits it sounds goofy, but claims the effects are already showing up as we explore entanglement, leading to what it calls spooky computing.
Spooky computing. And this ties into how we interact with reality too, right? The source calls humans Qualia machines.
Yes, exactly. It says we're fundamentally qualia machines constantly reacting to this event stream.
And qualia, remind us what that means in this context.
Qualia is defined as the smallest bit of dynamic action or energy needed to get meaning across from one consciousness to another, like tiny energetic nudges or prompts.
So every little prompt from this event stream that makes us react or decide something, that's a qualia.
That's the idea presented. And the source thinks this understanding that we're reacting to reality's flow via these energy packets will become more important, especially with this spooky computing stuff. It requires a philosophical shift, changing how we see ourselves.
That really does reframe consciousness and our place in things, if you follow the source's logic.
It absolutely does. And while this old world is breaking down, the source points to specific temporal markers in data, apparently visible since '97, signaling this change.
And silver is called out as a really key one.
Silver, yes, a very key temporal marker for, quote, great chaos and unsettled conditions in the economy. The idea is that silver's price breakout isn't just market noise. It's directly tied to moving into this new world of zero-point technology.
Zero-point technology, ZPT. What does the source imply by that?
It seems to refer to tapping into some kind of fundamental background energy of the universe. New energy, new tech paradigm. Silver's price action is seen as a direct signal of this shift away from the old energy money system.
So silver's price signals the move from fiat to ZPT.
According to this source, yeah. It even notes silver futures hitting over $35 recently, suggesting this is maybe only the third time it's reached that level relative to what the source calls long-term silver suppression. The source thinks silver's heading towards unobtainium.
Unobtainium. Wow. So scarce silver linked to new energy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to the year itself, 2027. Why that year, and why does the source think this end-of-the-world idea is catching on now?
Well, the source suggests it's catching on because regular people, the normies, as it calls them, are feeling their personal reality crumble. The systems they counted on are breaking, visibly, so they're looking for answers, and it feels like their world is ending.
And the source thinks established powers might try to use that feeling.
Yeah, it argues the powers that be will try to piggyback on that instability, hype the instability even more, maybe push their own agendas. It mentions a communist paradise idea, basically using the fear and chaos.
But it contrasts that with how aware groups, as it terms them, might handle it.
Exactly. It uses the analogy of swimming with the current versus thrashing around. Understanding the shift allows for smoother navigation, apparently.
But what about 2027 itself? Does the source give one big reason for that specific date?
Actually, no. It says there isn't one single cohesive reason. The claim is that the date is leaking out from various different military sources on various different continents.
Leaking out. So it's like scattered intel.
That's the suggestion, which is why, according to the source, some elites are supposedly building bunkers. They're reacting to this date popping up in different places, not necessarily one confirmed threat. The significance comes from its repetition across these channels.
Okay, so 2027 is significant because it keeps appearing in these leaks, not because of one predicted event like a meteor.
Right. And the source actually dismisses a meteor strike as unlikely. It brings up this concept of a self-regulating universe mechanism.
Self-regulating universe. How does that work?
It references a specific reported sighting of a meteor being deflected by a UAP, a UFO. And it connects that to Bob Lazar's ideas about anti-gravity and space-time distortion. Basically, the source says they're not particularly worried about meteors, even suggesting if Earth was destroyed, it's just what the universe wants. A bit fatalistic, maybe?
A universe that can swat away meteors using UAPs. Okay. What about the other big disaster scenario sometimes mentioned? A fake alien invasion. Project Blue Beam type stuff.
The source sees that as much more likely than a meteor, but still thinks it would be really hard to pull off.
Why difficult?
Because of the internet, and specifically what the source calls anons.
The online communities, the researchers, citizen investigators.
Exactly those. The source thinks they would just shred any fake narrative in real time. It argues the deep state, as it calls them, just doesn't have the wherewithal and the emotional energy to win that kind of info war, especially with all the real chaos happening and their own resources dwindling, partly signaled by that silver spike, according to the source.
Interesting. So the chaos itself actually makes controlling the narrative for a big fake event harder in this view.
That's the argument. Now, regarding the timeline and the economy during all this, the source does mention a depression. Yes, but it's careful to say this depression is different from past ones, like those engineered by banks or tied to the Fed's debt system. This one is different because the whole debt money world is dying as it happens.
And this hits the big established institutions hard.
Very hard. It specifically mentions real estate financing giants, saying there's no clear, easy path out for them. Expect massive changes there.
What about the immediate future? Does the source give any shorter-term predictions, say, for this summer?
It does. It predicted chaos escalating rapidly from May, maybe 50% more tension by July's end. Then, possibly a brief pause in July, a standstill or a mill-about period. The source speculates this might be related to the public processing, some really shocking news, maybe about aliens, ZPT, that kind of thing.
A pause to digest something huge.
Potentially. Then August is predicted to be the calmer month before things ramp up again.
Ramp up how?
The flood of chaos and change returns in fall and in through winter. Economic chaos, especially, is forecast to accelerate significantly starting in September. So escalation, maybe a pause, then faster escalation.
Intense change, a possible breather, then even faster change, especially on the economic front.
Wow. That's the pattern the source suggests it sees emerging.
Okay, given this picture of accelerating change and chaos, what's the advice from the source? How do people navigate this?
The main piece of advice, quite direct, is get your stress reactions under control.
That's the number one thing. Why?
Because the source claims the rate of change isn't just accelerating, the rate of acceleration itself is accelerating. Things are changing faster, faster, and faster. That puts huge stress on people.
So managing your internal state is critical just to function.
According to the source, yes. The advice is very practical. Focus on body and mind first. Exercise, diet, vitamins, stress reduction. Get biochemically organized before you try to make big external moves or spend lots of energy. It's framed as the foundation needed to handle the constant chaotic prompts from the event stream.
Get yourself grounded physically and mentally first.
That's presented as the key to navigating this, rather than just being swept away by it.
So let's bring it back to 2027. What's the final takeaway from the source on that?
The source repeats its view. 2027 truly is the end of the world as we know it or knew it. Not the end of Earth, but the end of that specific way the world was structured. The old system, the fiat reality, it just won't exist in a recognizable way anymore.
But not the end of the world, period.
No, the source is clear on that. It's not predicting human extinction or planetary destruction. It's about fundamental, irreversible changes to humanity, society, maybe even reality perception. For people invested in the old ways, it will feel like the end of their world. And the source acknowledges that feeling, but it's not forecasting the end of everything.
Well, this has certainly been a deep dive into a complex, challenging, and very unconventional perspective on where we are and where we might be going. It connects dots most people wouldn't even put in the same room.
It definitely pushes you to look beyond the headlines, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To look for potentially deeper, weirder patterns. And the takeaway for navigating it, according to this source, is twofold. Watch the external signs, the markers like silver, the narratives, but start with the internal grounding. Manage the stress.
So a final thought then. If this source is right, even partially, if reality is flowing from consciousness via an event stream we could maybe tap into, and the old world structure is dissolving,
Right.
what does that actually open up? How might we interact with whatever reality emerges? What does it mean to be a qualia machine navigating a sci-fi world? One reaction, one prompt at a time.